So again, I feel so honored and blessed to be in the presence of the upper room disciples. You know what I mean? I said that before, right?
Yes, you do.
I've said that.
Yes, you have.
I'm so drawn to you.
We to you.
You fulfill me. I guess it sounds like the movie, Jerry Maguire. You had me at hello. I don't know. But seriously, I walk away when I'm here. Get back into my car and I feel uplifted by your earnest love of God and your earnest desire for what we call in Hindu practice sadhana. I say D-H-A-N-A, sadhana, and that means spiritual practice. That means spiritual discipline. I mean, there's nothing more disciplined than you coming from wherever you come, all over, to this upper room and to celebrate. And we pray for your pastor, for your spiritual leader, Reverend Tita, that she be healed and that she be vital and vibrant. And I know when she returns and comes back to you that you are filled and blessed. So it's an honor that you asked me to come and to speak and share a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about light consciousness, resurrection consciousness. We just celebrated Easter last week, and I think you had a wonderful service. Reverend Tito was here, and I think all over the place we've, Christians, Catholics, Catholics are Christians, of course. Christians are Catholics, but all over the Christian calendar, I'm sure that there were churches all over that were celebrating Easter, the resurrection of Jesus. In the Jewish tradition, I'm an interfaith minister, so I'm always going to shed a little bit of light on all the different faith practices, but one in particular is Passover. Last night was the last night of Passover. So there's something that I think there's three examples that I would like to use. One is, of course, resurrection, and everybody's familiar with that. Everybody's familiar with that we just went through the Passion, the Garden of Gethsemane experience, the betrayal, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. And then we know about the Passover story. We know that the Israelites fled this oppression, this terrible enslavement, and they moved to 40 years in the desert of searching, this journey to look for the promised land. And then there's a third example I'd like to bring up, and that's the road to Emmaus. And I think it's very fitting when we talk about light consciousness. So, we go back to I love the story. I love the Passion. I love that time. I love that week. I love the remembering that Jesus himself in the Garden of Gethsemane was in this dark night of the soul. I think the last time I was here, I talked a little bit about that. I talked about the darkness. I talked about that crisis of faith. Not that Jesus had a crisis of faith necessarily, because Jesus was in awareness of his divinity, but at the same time, like us, in humanity. So when we're in this human flesh, when we get confused and think that our ego self is all that is, we're in a lot of despair. The Buddha said that. The Buddha said life is suffering. And then, probably a disciple from the back said, why? And Buddha said, because you're attached. And then the disciple said, attached to what? And he said, things that change. Nobody likes change. Nobody likes the buzz cut, right? Nobody likes change except the wet baby, right? Well, it's true. We don't like change. There's that great book, Who Moved My Cheese. Have you ever? I think I talked about that here before with you. And I'm like one. I'm that mouse. I don't like change. I don't like things being moved around on me. I want my way, my way. That's the ego. That's the egoic self. That's the human self, and not the divine self. The divine self is the soul. So when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's sweating blood. And he's so upset and disappointed that his disciples, not like you guys, no, you guys don't stay home. You guys come to the upper room. You guys stay awake for 1 hour. I'm serious, and that's what Jesus said. Jesus said, you couldn't stay with me for 1 hour? So he was in this isolation. Have you ever felt in isolation? That's that dark place. That's that tomb experience, right? That's feeling like everything is dark and everything is in despair and people are dying and people are sick and people are losing their jobs and, life on life's terms, we say in recovery. We talk about life on life's terms. Sometimes it's not all roses, right? It's good, bad, and ugly. So there's Jesus in the garden, and his friends go to sleep. He's sweating blood, and he says, let this cup pass. We said that. I've said that. Oh, please don't make this be true. We light candles, we pray to St. Jude. Please don't let this be, right? Don't let this cup pass. But then Jesus, in his divinity and in his wisdom and in his enlightenment, says, not my will, yours. Fast forward the tape, what happens. This is a terrible road to Calvary, this terrible road to Golgotha, right? The place of the skull where he's crucified. And you say to yourself, as a person, I was raised Catholic, so I have a lot of information, and my grandmother was an amazing spiritual guide. I would sit at her feet, and she was a theologian, and she would give Bible study, so I know a lot of the scriptures. And I would think about how did this divinity of Jesus, he knows who he is. He's this enlightened being, this Son of God, as we are sons and daughters of God. And it wasn't a happy ending. But wait, there's more. Right? Wait for it. Right? What happens? Oh my goodness, there's this resurrection. There's this light at the end of the tunnel. There's this coming out of the tomb experience. And of course, there's a couple of people that go and see Jesus and he witnesses to them. In the road to Emmaus, which is, it's maybe a couple of weeks later or something, these two people are walking down this road, and they're so in despair. Just like us when we open up our CNN app and we look and we see what's going on in the world, or we open up that piece of mail and it's like, right? And it's this terrible thing that's happening, this life on life's terms that's happening. And they're talking to each other and they're like, I can't even believe that this happened. Jesus was crucified. That Jesus was killed. And now what do we do? Now what do we do? And so then this stranger is walking with them and he's like, what's going on? And they're like, where have you been? What, do you live under a rock? Like, don't you know what's going on? Jesus was crucified. And as they start to talk, he starts to give them scripture. He starts to minister to them. He starts to teach them. And then they remember and they recognize that it's Jesus. They didn't recognize it first. How often do we not recognize the gift in the terrible mail, the terrible piece of news, the diagnosis, the whatever it is, fill in the blank? We all know. We can give a litany of the things that have happened. And the longer we live, the more chances we're going to get to see, some bad stuff happening, right? But how often do we fail to recognize the light, where all we see is the darkness? The same thing with the Israelites, roaming the desert, feeling lost, annoyed with Moses. Annoyed, right? We want water, there's no water, there's no food, and Moses goes to God and he prays, they do the prayer box, comes up, right? They pray, God gives them miracles. How often in our lives is God giving us miracles? Manna, quail, water. And yet, we forget. We don't see, as we're walking down the road, we don't see the light. We only see the darkness. So, what Jesus, in my interpretation, Jesus showed us in a mystical way and in a metaphysical way that we must crucify our ego. That's what we have to crucify. We have to crucify this notion that this body, this mind, this personality, this intellect is all that is. I think I'm all that. Marsha read this, great bio and whatnot. But that's not who I am. That's the humanity piece. And we don't say, oh, well, that's not me, that's not me. Well, it is me, but at the same time, I can't get too attached, as the Buddha reminds us. Don't get too attached. The Vedic scriptures teach us that too, the Hindu scriptures. Don't get fooled and think that you are all of that, because you're not. Who you are, really, is the divinity, the light. The light is all that is. So it isn't about, like, the promised land, is all the way over there, and we have to go 40 years trudging through the desert to find the promised land. The promised land is here. The promised land is in this place of, do we have water? Do we have enough food? Do we have enough bread? Do we have enough quail? It's in that place. Don't think, and I have to remind myself, it's not like we just stay home in bed and say, oh, well, God will take care of it. The light is coming. The light is here. I just, I have to just, let me go back under the covers. No, we have this spiritual sadhana. We have this discipline. We have this remembering. We remind each other. See, there was not just one person on the road to Emmaus. There was two. So there was two reminding each other, saying, isn't that the light? So it's reminding people and reminding ourselves and each other that it isn't just a tomb. The story doesn't end there. There's more to this story. The story is light. Jesus has always been light. The light is all that is. That's this consciousness. This is the cosmic awareness that we are not this body, that we are not this limited intellect or limited personality, that we are the soul, made up of the same ingredients as this power. Wow. This is what we talk about in unity consciousness of the potential is amazing. We're limited by our own lack of awareness or remembering who we're walking next to on the road. It's the Christ consciousness. It's the Christ consciousness. It's not dead. What was crucified was the ego. What was crucified was our way, our will. That's what was crucified. And Jesus says it on the cross. He says, into your hands I commend my spirit. Into your hands I commend. What does that mean? It means that I give my will, I give my care over to you. And so if I really trust you, and I'm going to end with this, and this is going to blow your mind, Facebook viewers, because I'm going to give you a scene from The Godfather.
All right.
All right?
All right.
I love this scene. There's a scene where it's towards the end of, I think it's Godfather 1. And it's towards the end. And Clemenza and Tessio, these two, they're what are they? Well, they're not soldiers. They're like capo regime.
Yeah.
All right, they're in charge. They're like captains. And Vito is old. Vito Corleone, he's kind of old, and Michael now, the son, is in charge. And so Tessio and Clemenza, they're not happy with the way things are going. Just like us, when we're not happy with the way things are going, right? When we're in the dark, when we're in that tomb feeling, right? So Tessio and Clemenza come up to Don Vito, and they say, we never thought that the day would come when we would ask you if we could start our own family. And Don Vito says to them, do you trust me? They say, yes, Godfather. Do I have your loyalty? They say, yes, Godfather. He says, then be a friend to Michael and do what he says. Whenever I'm in fear, whenever I'm in the tomb, whenever I'm lost in the desert for 40 years, and I'm like, where is this promised land already? I think about that scene in The Godfather, and I hear God saying to me, do you trust me? I say, yes. Yes, Godfather. Godfather. Get it?
We get it.
Do I have your loyalty? Yes. Then do what I ask. Then do what's being asked of you. Do what is being presented to you as a gift to unwrap. As a resurrection opportunity. Namaste.
Oh my God.